This is Bumper to Bumper, the car show. Drive in anxious and cruise out confident. With the best automotive information for your vehicle. And now your hosts, Matt Allen and Dave Riccio.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio. Matt Allen is not with me today, so I brought in Jon Riggle from Tri-City Transmission to help me help you with your car. At Bumper Radio, we are helping you, the motoring public, have a better overall car experience. So if you got car questions, we've got car answers. So we encourage you to give us a call, and give us a call early at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTAR. And for the shy types, you can text us at 411-923. And today on the Bumper to Bumper roadmap, we've got a little bit of fact or fiction, one that was kind of new to me. So we'll see how that goes. And, of course, open phones and texts. And then, my favorite topic. I didn't really want to work too hard on show planning today. so I had I went on a triple date last night, and there was a lot of drinking going on. So I was a little slow this morning. So we'll just talk about transmissions, John. What do you think?
Yeah, that's easy enough.
We can talk about transmissions all day long.
Yep.
And we can talk about anything you really want to talk about. But if it happens to be transmissions, well, today is transmission day. And the FAQs in transmissions, John, is this is how the phone rings every day at the shop. Hey, my transmission's bad on my Honda Odyssey. How much for a transmission? Well, why do you think it's bad? Well, because it doesn't go forward, it doesn't go backwards, and I Googled it online, and everything says Honda Odysseys have horrible transmissions. Yeah. Okay, well, bring it in. Let's check it out. Well, how much is it? I have no idea. Let's check it out. And we had one literally, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
What was wrong with it, John?
You had a bad ground wire connection, a bad battery cable, basically, where it attached to the body.
And the car wouldn't move. It wouldn't go forwards or backwards. So, as a consumer, that sometimes is the worst question you can ask a shop. How much is it for a transmission? Because if you don't need one, some shops will sell you one whether you need one or not.
Yeah.
They'll fix a transmission and they'll go, oh, shoot.
Well,
it was just the
they'll
ground
give you
wire.
the battery cable, Yeah.
You may not get the battery cable phone call. They may just stick it in.
Yeah.
If they're really bold, they'll try and sell it to you later. But these cars are so complex in they're so integrated, the engine and the transmission, and there's so many computers in them, is that how many times do we fix cars with, literally that one right there, and that one already had an alternator, correct? Somebody had already replaced it.
Yeah.
But they just didn't do a good job at it.
Yeah, they didn't. Well, they didn't understand the voltage drops. But the other trick about that one didn't have any codes stored in it, and that was the kind of clue for me.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, this car should have some codes in it somewhere, and it doesn't. Well, that's because every time the connection was bad, every time the cooling fans came on, this connection would be bad, and it would erase the codes.
So it's a frequently asked question. The other frequently asked question that we get at the shop is about transmission service. Every day the phone rings. Hey, I think I want to get a transmission service on my car, but I hear all these woes. Like, if I service my transmission's going to go bad. Some people say do it. Some people say don't do it. My neighbor says yay. And some people say you're rolling the dice if you service your transmission.
Yeah.
John, what do you think?
I don't think servicing a transmission in and of itself is going to be an issue. Improperly servicing a transmission is a bigger issue than servicing the transmission, by itself. So in some instances, it's probably better off not doing it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So a bad transmission service is much worse than no transmission service at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have transmissions that are on the on the bench, and we're rebuilding them, and we take the transmission pan off, and we see that, okay, whoever serviced a transmission last did not pull out the old O-ring on the filter, and they stuck the new filter up into the pump with a new O-ring on it, and so it's double O-ring. So there's a little bit of a hydraulic leak right there. Well, that didn't cause the transmission to go out overnight, but over the course of 5,000 or 10,000 miles, it did. And unfortunately, most people in the industry that aren't specifically transmission technicians don't know a whole lot about the transmission.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of experience with it, and a lot of guys won't read the instructions.
That never happens.
Yeah.
So we want to, and this is the phone call. Well, how much is your transmission service? Well, it could be between $200 and $300. Well, why so much? I can get it done at the car wash for $89.
Right.
Hold on a second. It's a very expensive investment if you have to buy a transmission. I worked at a car wash when I was in high school. Everybody starts somewhere. but I think I wrecked a couple cars.
Yeah.
Not because I meant to,
Right.
just because I was learning the rope. And so I would say, getting an oil change in a car wash, maybe not such a big deal. But when you're talking about this is a, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Some of these transmissions, John, could be $5,000.
Yeah.
Am I going to give that to the guy at the car wash that really doesn't have a ton of experience?
Well, and the math doesn't work either. At $89, some of these fluids in some of these cars cost way more than that.
Yes.
Just for the fluid alone. Some of that stuff's $20 a quart, $25 a quart.
And that's the other thing that comes up is that to make that $89 price point, there is literally, we stock 32 different flavors of transmission fluid. And this is a little thing about John. He actually tastes them. Yeah. He's embarrassed as he can be, but he literally is like, that doesn't.
Fairly effective.
He goes, that didn't taste like ATF plus 4 to me.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it doesn't smell like it. And literally, we're looking at transmission fluid all day long. And so somebody services a transmission with the wrong fluid, in partly because there's vendors out there who would tell us, oh, yeah, this fluid covers all these fluids and all these
universal
ranges.
Fluids, yeah.
There's no such thing as universal fluid.
Absolutely not.
And so all those 32 flavors that we have on the shelf, we literally have sent those out to Lab 1 with Jason Cronlin and had him analyze them so we could see what the additive package was. I mean, you got to know how much boron's in there, right?
Yeah.
as compared to the next one, so that you can really see that they're different. And they literally did an infrared scan so we get kind of a fingerprint of what the oil looks like. Right. And they're all very different. There's a couple that are identical, but different colors even.
Right, yeah.
So we have some Volkswagen fluids where one is brown and one is blue and one is green, and they're all identical under a microscope. They just use a different food coloring.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to this transmission business. What's another one, John, we had in our shop this week that didn't move, that where somebody called and asked for a transmission, and what did they need?
Oh, the Ford van with a broken flex plate.
Ford van with a broken flex plate. So there again, the phone rings. Hey, hear about you guys on KTR, and you guys do transmission work. How much for a transmission in my van? Well, what's wrong with your transmission? Well, I don't know. It just doesn't go forward or backwards. I just need to know the worst case.
Yeah.
And I some of my lines are kind of cheesy. I'll say something like, well, the worst case is you buy a transmission you don't need. And that would be the worst case. In this case, all we had to do, the transmission had already been worked on in the past, and I think that's why the flex plate was actually broken.
Yeah, something odd happened there. Yeah.
So, we pull the transmission out, check it out on the bench, and it was okay, and we just had to replace the flex plate. But that's a situation where someone's calling for something and asking for a price on something that is really, they're putting the cart ahead of the horse.
Yeah.
And there is room for diagnostic, but I think we hate that uncomfortable feeling of, oh no, what is it? How bad is this going to be? If you can just give me the worst case, then I'll be happier, And so they want that answer, and these things are complex.
Yeah. It's understandable though, but unfortunately, there's so many variables in it, and like my better half Cassie says, how much is a bag of groceries? And that's kind of what we're up against with trying to price stuff over the phone and stuff. Really need to know a little bit about it. There's often some simple observations we can make that'll get us a lot closer than,
Oh, yeah. And you did mention, we're talking before the show, John, because people want to know how bad is it going to be? What am I in for? And then the other thing is people call me up and say, hey, I want to know how much to put a window regulator in my car. And, hey, was your car at a shop? And inevitably I get, yes, it is at a shop. Okay. And I'll ask them, what are they telling you? Well, they're telling me $450, And so to me, that wouldn't sound odd for a certain type of car. So there is tools online where people can actually go and see you can get a price range of what it takes to fix the car.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, you just don't know.
Yeah.
So you're like, I don't know. They tell me it's $500, but I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent. But generally, shop to shop, they're going to be within 10% if we're talking apples to apples. If there's some dramatic difference, there could be a gouge situation that happens all the time.
And a lot of things. There's a lot of confusion over what people include in estimates. There's times. Okay, so we've got one of the Nissans in that has glycol in it. Well, now you have to either deal with a radiator or a cooler. So there can be some variations there. That's not just a transmission overhaul. Now you've also have to deal with the root source, which was how did the coolant get into the transmission. So now you've got an estimate that's different than just pricing out just a transmission for it. So you have to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges.
Well, and I think when it comes to that key, I think calling and people ask for a price because they don't really know what else to ask. But if you're dealing with a good shop that's been around, long established, good reputation, didn't open up yesterday, chances are their pricing has been reasonable.
Yeah.
If they've been gouging people, well, they're probably not going to be in business that long.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the reputation's going to catch up with them. So hopefully that can relieve some of the anxiety. But going into it, it is uncomfortable to not know what you're going to possibly spend.
Sure.
You just want to know if you're going to be committed to something that you can't say no to.
Sure.
So I tell people, come on in. It's $78. We'll check it out. It's going to take us about a day to get you a good answer, and it's completely non-committal.
And
if you don't like what we have to say, our feelings aren't hurt.
We have plenty of cars. We get some of the high-end cars in there, the Rovers and things like that, where people don't, they don't realize that's a $7,500 transmission,
big deal.
And they don't have the money for that. So I've seen them, more than a few times get towed out, and they get towed back a year later when they get their tax return back or whatever.
Right.
So people need to know, and it's tough.
Right. And I've had people that say, well, come on, just give me the worst case. Well, I've heard those same symptoms for a bad ground connection.
Yeah.
But I've also heard those same symptoms for, hey, you need a $3,000 transmission.
Yeah.
So it could be $100 to find that little wire problem, or it could be $3,000, and it could be really anywhere in between.
How would you like to park your car for a year, save up $7,500, and find out it only needed a wire connection or a bad battery cable or something like that?
That's true. It's worth getting an accurate diagnosis so you can make a good decision if that car's set dusty. And I have seen that happen on many, many occasions.